Hello, this is Literacy Ready History Unit 2 Lesson 1. This lesson is the very first lesson in the second unit, which deals with the United States involvement in international affairs. And the first lesson gets students ready to be thinking about the essential question that guides this unit. The essential question is similar to the one that guided Unit 1, and that has to do with liberty and freedom, but this time as it relates to our involvement with other countries around the world.
In the very first activity, students are viewing photographs, and these photographs actually depict walls around the world. The reason that we're showing the photographs is just we're thinking about the meaning of liberty as expressed in the countries with whom the U.S. was involved during the 1960s. This is kind of a carryover from the essential questions that were part of Unit 1, and that it has to do with liberty and freedom and our ideas about that in the U.S. Only this in Unit 2 that's extended to our international involvements. The reason we're beginning with pictures is because pictures are a more accessible way for students to start thinking about ideas than print. So when they are viewing the photographs of walls, they're discussing the role of the photographs and a historian's understanding of events, as well as discussing what the walls are depicting.
The first thing students are going to do is they're going to view some photographs. These photographs depict walls. They are walls from different countries, and the photographs are meant to spur thinking about the meaning of liberty as expressed in those countries with whom the U.S. was involved during the 1960s. And one of the things you're going to be doing in Activity 1 is discussing the role of photographs in historians' understanding of events.
So on this slide you see the pictures that the students see. These are pictures that are both in the student academic notebook as well as in teacher's edition, so that you can see there are different walls around the world: Northern Ireland, Ireland, Cuba, border fencing between the United States and Mexico, the wall between East and West Germany, and the West Bank barrier. So all of these are significant walls that had to do with the United States in some way.
Here is a picture of the slides that students are viewing, and they are in the student academic notebook as well as in the teacher's guide. You'll see that there are the East Germany, East Berlin, West Berlin Wall, the Berlin Wall, the West Bank Barrier, the Vietnam Memorial, the peace walls in Northern Ireland, the border fencing between the United States and Mexico, and then the quarantine of Cuba during the missile crisis. So those are the walls that they're going to be seeing pictures of.
What you would do at this point as a teacher is ask some questions to get students thinking deeply about these walls. The questions are as follows: what role do photographs play in helping us understand events? That question has to do with the evidence that historians can actually derive from photographs, because although they are one
What you're going to do to help them think about these pictures is that you're going to ask them several questions. The first one is, what role do photographs play in helping us understand events? The second is, what do historians have to consider when they look at photographs? And the third is, do photographs represent events accurately? Why or why not? Well, these questions are designed to get at the idea that photographs don't really tell the whole story. It's a matter of who's taking the picture, what perspective they're taking it from, and what they are intending to show in the picture. So you're always going to be asking of a picture is, why is it depicted? Why is this a site depicted this way? What did the photographer mean to put in? What are the possibilities of things that he might have put in or she might have put in that they did not put in? So what's being left out of the picture? And those are the kinds of questions that historians would ask.
So now we're moving on to activity two. In activity two, students are analyzing the photographs beyond what they did in activity one. So they're going to view each of the photographs. They're going to answer questions about them. And they're going to do this in their academic notebook. The questions are, what is your overall impression of the subject matter? What is your background knowledge? What activities are taking place in each quadrant of the photo? That is, they're supposed to divide the photograph into quadrants and look at each quadrant separately. That gets them to pay more attention to the details of the photograph. What inferences can you make from the photograph? And then finally, the last two questions have to do with what more you need to know. The actual essential question that is part of this unit. Question number 4 is, some walls bring us together, some separate us, some increase our liberty, some decrease our liberty. What are the roles of the photos on this slide? That is the one that actually gets them to think about the upcoming essential question. And the fifth one, what more do you need to know about this slide?
After they finish that discussion, in activity 2, they're going to be doing a deeper analysis of each one of the photographs. So they're going to view each of the photographs and they're going to answer the questions about them, and the questions are below. The first one is, what is your overall impression of the subject matter? What is your background knowledge? That gets them to think about what it is that they're looking about, at least in terms of the subject, and what they can bring to bear to help them interpret that photograph. The second is, what activities are taking place in each quadrant of the photograph. If they have participated in Unit 1, they may have some idea of how they're supposed to look at photographs, but what's useful in order to look at all the details in a photograph is to divide the photograph into quadrants and then pay attention to the details in each quadrant. So that's an activity that we're asking them to do. The third question is, what inferences can you make from the photograph? In other words, you are observing particular details. What sense are you making of it? And then fourth, some walls bring us together, some separate us, some increase our liberty, some decrease our liberty. What are the roles of the photos on this slide? Again, that's helping students think about what will lead to the essential question that is guiding the unit about liberty and freedom. And finally, what more do you need to know about this slide? Because especially if students lack background information, they're not going to know the context of each of the photos, and yet a historian would want to know what that context was, want to know more about the event and what that photograph is portraying.
What you need to know is that these questions, at least the questions about what activities are taking place in each quadrant, inferences can you make, are focusing on observations and inferences. It's something that students need to learn to do, is to make an observation and then from
So, what you need to know is the questions focus on observations, that is, what is seen, and inferences, that is, what sense can be made. And students often get the two confused when they look at a photograph. They'll be making inferences and think that they're actually making observations, or vice versa. So you may need to help students understand the difference between the two, and making them, helping them to understand that may mean that you would need to model the task and have some group practice in that particular task of separating what they see from the sense they're making. If they have had gone through Unit 1, they may already know how to do that.
In activity 3, they're going to read about the context of each of the photographs. And they're going to revise their previous answers to questions if needed, if after reading the context they come to a different conclusion about what the photograph means. In other words, the inferences they are making about it. And they're also be thinking a little more critically about what the photograph shows and what does not show. And one thing they're going to be doing after they do this activity is they're going to discuss the potential for a photograph to be biased. Usually students think of photographs as telling the truth. That's what's really there. That's what really happened, when there is a possibility that it could be biased, and students need to know that.
In activity 3, students are reading something about the context of each photograph. And they can, after they read the context, then revise their previous answers to the questions if needed. In other words, the contextual information is going to be filling in their background information if they don't know it, and might be giving a particular perspective on each of the photographs. So you want to discuss the potential for bias in the photographs, and also for potential bias in the actual contextual information, because they come from different sources.
So here is some information on this slide about the first photograph of the Berlin Wall. And this was taken from history.com, which is a website that has a lot of primary sources and some explanation about those primary sources on the big events in history. So if you read this, you see that it is an explanation of what happened when the Berlin Wall was toppled. You'll also see some pretty interesting language, in that if you were an East German writing this history, you might be writing it in a little different way than you would be writing it if you were a citizen of the United States.
Here's an example of the contextual information from the first photograph that depicts the Berlin Wall. It says, on August 13th, 1961, the communist government of the German Democratic Republic began to build a barbed wire and concrete anti-fascistischer Schutzwall, or anti-fascist bulwark, between East and West Berlin. That is one of the things that's depicted in the picture. The official purpose of this Berlin Wall was to keep Western fascists from entering East Germany and undermining the social state, but has primarily served the objective of stemming mass defections from east to west, that is, from East Berlin to West Berlin, and then to freedom in the West. The Berlin Wall stood until November 9th, 1989, when the head of the East German Communist Party announced that citizens of the GDR could cross the border whenever they pleased. That night, ecstatic crowds swarmed the wall. Some crossed freely into West Berlin, while others brought hammers and picks and began to chip away at the wall itself. To this day, the Berlin Wall remains one of the most powerful and enduring symbols of the Cold War. And note that this contextual information was retrieved from a website, history.com, and that is a website that provides information and primary documents for many of the main events in the history of the United States as well as other places. And also available on the site are videos, other pictures, and links to related topics about this. So that's a really good, maybe a good resource for you to know about is history.com. However, if you think about this context, you could be thinking about the perspective that it represents. It does definitely represent a Western perspective. That is, if you were a communist or a citizen of East Berlin, you might be giving a slightly different interpretation of the wall than if you were a United States citizen or a citizen of West Germany.
So that was just one example. As students read about the context of the lessons, what they should be doing is thinking about the various sources of information as a clue to the perspective that's being taken about the event itself, and think about the difference in perspective among the different sources that the context information was taken from. For instance, what difference might there be between the website history.com and the U.S. Border Patrol, which is another source that I got contextual information from?
So as students read about the context of the lessons, that's one of them, and there are those kinds of contextual information paragraphs about each of the photographs. They need to be thinking about the various sources of information as a clue to the perspective being taken. We talked a little bit about that in relation to the Berlin Wall. There's another one, a photograph that has contextual information that comes from the United States Border Patrol that is about the border between Mexico and the United States. So you might be asking yourself, what might be the difference in perspective between history.com and the U.S. Border Patrol? Would one be more biased than the other? Why would it be? And those are the kinds of questions that historians might ask.
In activity 4, you're going to think about the essential question that is guiding unit 2, and that is, what were the concepts of liberty and freedom, and in this case from the perspectives of those people depicted in the photographs on the walls, and what they're asked to do is engage in a free write about the concept of liberty in relation to the inhabitants of these countries. So they're sitting down and you're writing your approximately lines about that.
The next thing students are going to do in activity 4 is to consider the concept of liberty as depicted in these photographs. And so what they're going to do is they're going to engage in a free write about that concept in relation to the inhabitants of the countries in the photographs. So in relation to the East and West Berliners, in relation to the Mexicans and those people living on the United States borders, etc.
And the way we do a free write in this unit is that students are directed to write continuously without stopping for 5 minutes. So it's okay to give them a couple of minutes before starting. You can also have them, when you're done with a 5-minute time, you can also have them share their ideas in pairs, and then pick one to share in the whole class, with the whole class, so that you're getting students involved in thinking on their own, thinking with somebody else, and then thinking together.
Well, when we ask students to write, engage in a free write, what we're asking them to do is to write continuously without stopping for 5 minutes. In other words, they can't even necessarily pick up their pen. They don't have to. If they are stuck on something, they can just read, I'm stuck, they can write, I'm stuck, till they're ready to write something else. So for 5 minutes continuously without doing anything else. It's okay to give them a couple of minutes of thinking time before starting, and then when they are done with their 5 minutes, it's a good idea to have them share their ideas in pairs and then pick one to share with the whole class So one of their ideas that then becomes part of a class discussion about their thoughts about liberty in relation to the pictures. This activity will help students think independently, think in pairs, and think as a group.
The vocabulary you want them to learn to use in this lesson are vocabulary words that help students actually talk about the discipline of history. There are three that are important: sourcing, which what they're doing is they're looking at the source of the context information and the source of the photography. You're asking them to think about the contextualization, that is the context around which these photographs were taken. And you want them to understand that photographs are usually considered primary sources, a kind of source that historians rely upon in order to understand what happened in the past.
And the last activity, they're going to be considering vocabulary that is part of this lesson. And the vocabulary that we're highlighting in this lesson are the three tools that historians use. That is sourcing, contextualization, and primary sources. What we're asking students to do is to say how they used those three tools in the activities that they participated in this lesson.
So in that activity, what they're supposed to do is tell how they used those three vocabulary words in the activities that they completed in the assignment. Now that's different from just asking for a definition of those three things, but they will need to know the definition in order to explain how they use them. And you might ask them to include a definition in why they use that tool as well. So if it's not explicit that they have to define it before they talk about how they use it, but you might want to have that. So that's the end of Unit 1, and what you're ending up with is an idea of the perspective of other countries and their involvement with the United States and their ideas about freedom and liberty, which is guiding essential question for Unit 2.
Now this task is different from the one that just had students write a definition, because they're going to need to know the definition in order to be able to explain how they use the tools. So you might want to ask them to provide a definition as well as an explanation of why they use the tool, so that you'll see if students have any misconceptions about what each of those terms means. Now, if students have already participated in Unit 1, they should have a pretty good idea of what these terms mean, so you'll have to judge whether students will need some extra help with that or not. And that is the end of Lesson 1.